I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. Well, it's time to take a look in the old mailbag. You know, I often take a break from repairing furniture and making videos to answer my emails and comments. I get a lot of questions from viewers concerning their furniture and restoration projects. If you have a question for me, send an email along with some photos. This is one word, thomasjohnsonrestoration@gmail.com. If you'd like to send a video, you can upload that here on YouTube with the hashtag AskTomJohnson. Let's take a look. Hello, Mr. Johnson. I heard you refer to your card table book in one of your YouTube videos. Would you kindly share the title and perhaps the ISBN number of the book and where it is sold? We are card table fans and look forward to a great read. Here's the book. The cover's got imprints of the different designs of tops. Unfortunately, my edge is sun damaged. But this is the show which resulted in this book. The pamphlet itself has a lot of interesting information in it. I feel fortunate to own this book. The show was good. It was a long time ago, though. Here's the information. There's a lot about the history of card playing. It's interesting. Diagrams indicating the names of all the different elements of these tables. Goes on to show all the different legs. And once again, you learn the terminology. All the different shapes of the tops. Different inlays that were used. It's kind of cool. Construction techniques. And finally, the tables themselves. And it says where they're from, and in the text you've read about the different regional characteristics. Hi Tom, I have a question about a piece we own. It is a coffee table that had a price sticker placed on it by one of our grandkids. Once the sticker was removed, it lifted some of the finish. The piece was somewhat pricey, and the finish appears to be a hand wax type finish over distressed wood. I don't think it's varnish or urethane. Really looks like a wax to me. Any advice on how to repair this? Yeah, looking at this photo, it's tough to say if it's discoloration or an actual defect in the finish. I've seen a lot of situations like this where I was convinced that the finish was damaged after some adhesive had been on the surface, only to find out that ultimately it was just the adhesive. So the first step, I use a product like this, Goof Off, and I follow the directions, use nothing more than a rag, so that you can be sure that the adhesive is off. You see in this video, I'm cleaning a top. Of course, in the video, this top is a laminate top, a little bit easier. And here, since I had crud cutter on it, anyway, I'm letting the crud cutter loosen that adhesive. You'll see I even use a razor blade, help get it off, but once again, that's a laminate top. So go ahead and make sure there's no residue left on the top. And once you're sure of that, if indeed the finish is damaged, unfortunately, the table has to be refinished, which can be expensive. But if you started if by chance you've started a savings fund for your grandchildren, this could be a good opportunity to make a withdrawal. You know, the way that you describe the finish of this dining table, in the latest Fine Woodworking magazine, there's an article on what they call hard wax oils. I have no experience with these finishes, but the way they were describing it made me think of your table. And so it's possible that maybe that finish can be repaired with one of the finishes they talk about in the magazine here. So you have to check that out. Up next. Hi Tom, We have a Bob Timberlake kitchen table for about 40 years, and over that time has developed a dingy gray finish on some areas. How would you recommend I can remove these areas and potentially refinish the tabletop? By the way, your brother's shop in Avon is very close to where I live, so I'll stop by and see him one of these days. Small world. Yeah, wow, boy, looking at these tops, it may just be the photographs, but it looks more than dingy. It looks to me like it's heavily water damaged, or at least damaged over time with moisture. I think the first thing to try is what I show in my video here. There's a really nice antique child's rocker that was heavily water damaged in a burst pipe situation. And the finish on this chair very much reminded me of what I was seeing on that kitchen table. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to take a rag, a nice knit rag, and put some alcohol, that's denatured alcohol, on it, and pad the surface. And the idea being that I wasn't very careful there, the idea being that the alcohol can drive that moisture out. This old finish was pretty durable. I could be pretty aggressive with the alcohol, but you do have to be careful. You really don't know what the finish is. And even though I was aggressive, I still was watching the rag very closely. I only want to see dirt on the rag, because here with the decoration, I've got to be a lot more careful. This is unlike your table, but it gives you an idea of what you need to do. But I just took it slowly, continually checking my rag. So that's the first step. And beyond that, if that works, you may only need to wax it or polish it. But if it's not really working for you, then the only alternative is to refinish the tabletop. You should take it to my brother Greg. But if you do it yourself, I have plenty of videos on refinishing, and there's plenty of books on it too. Good luck. Okay, another one. Can you point me to a video where you refurbish something made of pine? Seems like pine is so different from the hardwoods. The attached picture of a pine cabinet is at my deceased mother's house, and if I don't restore it, my family will throw it away. Wow, that's a handsome cabinet. You know, over the years, I've not restored a lot of pine pieces. I think in all my videos there's only one pine cabinet, and it just needed a piece of glass. Why is that? I really don't know. Maybe pine just doesn't get the respect it deserves. But as you can see from this cabinet left at your mother's house, there are a lot of beautiful pieces of furniture made of pine. It's funny, in the first photo it looks like it has no finish on it. It's kind of weathered. The second picture looks good. So, but anyway, I've got two different ideas. This is an example of a cabinet. I'm actually not sure if it was pine or not, but it's the same effect because I think you should do this. Your pine cabinet needs really good cleaning. And here I'm using a mixture of crud cutter and a gray pad, getting the paint off. But I'm really giving this cabinet a good cleaning. And I think you can see how it's coming out. And then in this instance, I just used a wax polish, the Howard's Feed and Wax, but I feel like there's a little bit of finish on here. Your cabinet I'm not so sure of. When your cabinet is cleaned down really well with the crud cutter or degreaser, if it's too light, it looks too raw, you may want to put some stain on it, and that's okay. One thing I will say about pine, if you're planning on adding a little oil stain to the mix here, with pine and all softwoods, staining takes a little special care. So the effect that the oil stain has on the wood greatly depends on the type of wood. This is a piece of pine I'm going to try it on. And how well the wood is sanded. In other words, oil stain, the pigments are larger molecules that depend upon the scratches, the grain, and any other defects in the wood to grab hold. So we have wood sanded to 100, sanded to 150, and sanded to 220. And we're going to see what the different effects are from one stain. In theory, when I apply this stain, the 100 will be darker, and the 150 less so, and the 220 lesser because of the heavy scratch pattern of the 100 should pick up more of the pigment. And likewise, the other ones with much finer scratch patterns won't pick up as much. Pine does not take stain very well. Does not take oil stain very well. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so I think that you can see the 100 is a lot darker, 150 medium, and then the 220 is even lighter. Same piece of wood, so it's all because of the scratch pattern. I would only sand it with 220 lightly. You don't want a lot of penetration with the stain. I would not worry about that top surface that's so badly marked up. I would leave that alone. And you've seen me do that a lot of times in my videos. So you can stain it and put a couple coats of Waterlock's tung oil varnish on it. Oh, I like this one. This gentleman sent in a very nice video. Let's watch it.
Hi Tom, Andrew Clark here from Qualified in Noise and Mess. And my question is relating to this late 19th century carver, which is very stable, sturdy and comfortable. The main issue is that my question relates to the legs. Like so many chairs and many that I've seen on your channel, over time, people have done what you might call running repairs. And in this instance, the stretchers have come loose and somebody's put a nail in. So there's a nail there. We have a nail there. And saving the best till last, we have a whacking great screw. What occurred to me was to cut the tenon off, drill out to a reasonable depth and make a new tenon end on the lathe, epoxy it in and then glue it in, well, epoxy it into the leg. Although hide glue is traditional, I think here we need to go for strength. What would you advise or recommend that I do here?
I've got a video showing how to repair, one way to repair a turned stretcher without replacing it. You'll see here, these are some big benches, Windsor style plank seat benches. And here's a badly damaged spindle. And once I get this cleaned off a bit, you'll see how I went ahead and repaired it. I'm going to drill this for a dowel. Never a great solution, because when you drill for a dowel, it weakens the wood around the perimeter of the dowel. But other than make a whole new piece, there's not much other solution. All right, this has a diameter of about 20 millimeters, a little bit more than 3/4 of an inch. My rule of thumb is to not go more than half of that. So I'll use like a 9.5 millimeter dowel, or about a 3/8 dowel. I'm going to use my old Stanley 59 to try to guide it. It's tough on this irregular surface though. I double stick tape some sandpaper to the jig though to help hold it in place. And once it's drilled out, you plug in your dowel. In this video, the dowel's already there. And then in the case of a massive piece like this, it's best to call in a couple of lads to help you assemble it. But with your chair, I don't think you'll need to call in any of your mates to help. And of course, sometimes a leg or a spindle is shattered altogether, which gives it its unique problems. And here with this chair, you can see how I repaired that situation. There's no great way to drill a dowel when it's like this. So I'm going to glue this back where it belongs. And then later I'll then cut this and I'll have a nice surface to drill my dowel. So as you can see, we've got the seat well protected with plastic, and I've clamped a board across here that'll give me something to clamp to when I clamp this leg on. Now, even though I'm going to cut this and re-glue it later, I still want to make sure that I'm gluing it up square now. Okay, so now I've got the leg glued back where it belongs. And now I'm going to cut the leg off. I'm not going to cut right where the break is. There's a great place right here. That'll be a better place to make the cut right below the crack. The dowel will still go through the crack either way. So I'm sawing, I'm going around and around the leg. I'm not just going to attempt to cut straight through. I'm going to go around and around so I make sure that my cut is always right in that little groove there. So now I've got a great surface that I can mark off and drill on both sides and put it back together again. Alright, now I'm going to use a center finder, which is a device that I can put on an object like this, and it helps you find the center. I'm going to drill this freehand, and I'm going to drill it as straight and true as I can. But the fact is, I don't mind if it's going to, I want it to be a little bit sloppy. When I glue this together, I'm going to use epoxy, and that will allow me to make sure that the leg is perfectly straight. Alright, I cut a dowel for the glue up, but I am going to put a vertical slot in this dowel to help relieve pressure during the glue up. This is where the slot allowed the air to come out. Alright, the leg is very solid now. All that's left is I need to do a little bit of touch-up work here where the original break was. So if you remember, this leg was completely broken off. It was a very ragged break. I glued it back together, then cut it to give me a smooth surface so I could drill and put a dowel in there. And it looks pretty good.
You know, both these videos show drilling dowels into spindles. It's just never a great idea. It weakens the wood around where the dowel is drilled. The only other thing to do is replace the spindles altogether, and I think it's always a good idea to try to repair them. As far as the screw through the leg, after I glue it back up, I would put that screw or a better screw right where it belongs. The hole is there. You might as well use it at this point. It might actually help. Okay, another letter. Hi, I have an antique corner chair and a small portion of the chair broke off. I have the piece. Is this something you could repair? Well, I love the chair, by the way. It really looks like a nice chair, and it looks like a genuine period piece. This gives me an opportunity to mention I'm not taking in any new work from customers. But if I were to take in this job, this is how I would do it. All I've got to do to this chair is repair this piece that's broken off. And it looks like it's been broken for some time. There's a lot of dirt in here. Then it has some new breaks. And there's really not too much I can do to strengthen it or improve it in any way. I think all I can do is clean this dirt off as best I can, get this in the position exactly where it goes, which is, it's resisting that a little bit, and then clamp it up and hope for the best. So what I want to do is try to clean the dirt off these old surfaces. I'm going to use a little bit of lacquer thinner and a wire brush and just gently brush it. I don't want to get any thinner on the old finish, but I want to try to clean this surface as best I can. I also want to clean this side. Alright, I think I've got this as clean as I can get it. I'm ready to glue back in there. I'm not going to push it all the way in there until I put glue in it. I'm afraid if I tap this in where it's supposed to go, I won't be able to get it off again around that wooden pin. So I'm going to go for it. Okay, let's take the clamps off. I think I got it back really well right where it belongs. So there's a little bit of a crack along here. What I'll do is I'll get some hot water, clean the glue off, and then melt some wax into those cracks. This is just a little warm water in a scrubby pad here. It does a good job of removing the excess glue. Now after that wax cools down, you can buff off the excess. Now I'll just go over the chair with my beeswax polish. That looks pretty good.
Oh, I like this one. Good morning, Tom. Do you reuse your glue syringes after filling them with epoxy? How about the tips? Clean them with alcohol and then wash them? I usually use a brush to a small stick to push my mix into the cracks, but I see you use syringes and I'm curious. Thanks. Yeah, I like the question about cleaning them. I really don't like so-called single-use products of any type, especially plastic, because in almost all cases they're only used one time for the simple reason that people are too lazy to clean them and use them again, and that's not a good reason. There are some good reasons sometimes. 99% of the time it's not a good reason not to reuse something. I'm glad this came up because I'm very much against the use of single-use plastics. And yes, there are some legitimate uses for single-use plastic, but 99.9% of the time, plastic is not reused because people are too lazy to clean it. And I am not being sanctimonious here. We are all equally responsible for polluting our entire environment with plastic. It's very easy to find syringes. Probably get them at the hardware store, but also at, if you Google it. I like these kind with the, that take different tips, because the size of your needle, it depends on the viscosity of your adhesive. This is a good place, and they sell different size tips and even extra rubber washers. In this recent video, I cleaned out epoxy from my syringe. These syringes clean up easily with alcohol. I don't consider any of these plastic things to be disposable. They can be cleaned up and reused many, many, many times. I didn't quite show everything, but I also put the needle on there and swished that back and forth. It was so clean I didn't feel the need to do anything else, and it worked fine. Yes, somebody sent in a video I don't have to read. Let's check it out.
Tom, this table leaf is buckled right here And you can see this is a board right here that's been glued to this board. And it has buckled. How would I get this buckle out? I thought if I could lift the veneer underneath and expose the crack, I could maybe soften it and clamp it. But if I do that, then the veneer on the top would probably crack, so I'm not sure what to do. Have you got a suggestion?
Yeah, that's a tough problem, but hey, I've got a video where I repaired a buckled panel. It's a little bit worse than this one here, but the principle is still the same. Let's check it out. This is an antique cabinet to which I'm doing a lot of veneer repairs. But there's one area here I want to show in this video. This is an area where the core has shrunk and the veneer has buckled. This is a very common thing we see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up this buckled veneer with a heat gun, work hide glue under it everywhere I can, and then just clamp it down. And then we'll see how well it works when I take the clamp off. The veneer, as it heats up, is just becoming very, very flexible. I'll keep heating it until I feel it's as flexible as I can get it. I think I've got this about as hot as I dare, and it definitely is more pliable. I'd like to point out I'm using hide glue here. I think it'll be really compatible with the hide glue that's under here, but you could actually use any kind of carpenter's glue. Okay, I'm just warming this up a little bit before I put the caul on. This is a board I use a lot for veneering. It's got a camber to it, so that when I put the clamps on each end and apply pressure, it'll apply pressure all the way across this board. All right, tomorrow we'll see how well it went down. The beauty of it is that if part of it didn't go down the way I want it to, or anything else that's wrong, I can heat it up and redo it. Hopefully I won't need to. Okay, let's see what we got. Wow, all that buckling went down. It's flat. Now I got to get this all this excess glue off of here to see what I've got. I'll get a damp rag and a scrubby pad and clean that off, then have a better look. Okay, all that glue came off pretty easily. And now with the glue off, I can see that there are some areas where some of the veneer is sticking up, where maybe it overlapped a little bit. But I'll let this dry. I've got more veneer to glue down over here. And then I'll sand this and see how it sands out. I think it'll sand flat. Luckily, this veneer's got some thickness to it. Okay, this is sanding up nice and flat. I got a little sanding to do. I've got to use some wood putty in the cracks and defects and sand everything flat. But I can tell that when I get the first coat of finish on here, it's going to look pretty good. The next letter talks about a problem that I've never been able to solve 100%. Let's read. Hi there. The movers just brought back the secretary that my great-great-grandfather bought at auction in the 1850s. Alas, one of the glass doors was shattered. A new pane would look very odd beside the squirrely one remaining, and I wonder whether you could point us to a source for antique glass. Many thanks to any light that you can shed. Great question. Finding replacement glass that matches the antique glasses seems really difficult. But depending on the size of the the pane of glass that you need, you have a couple of options. And one option is to buy restoration glass. And by that I mean Bentheim restoration glass. Let's look at their website. This is the website for Bentheim restoration glass. And I can't say too much about this glass. It's perfect.
Since you're in Maine, there's lots of old houses here. So another place to find antique glass is in old window sashes. A lot of people give them away. You can see them on the street. You can also get them at an architectural salvage yard. Now, getting the glass out of these frames can be an adventure. No different than getting glass into a frame. That's an adventure too. Let's take a look.
Yeah, this is an old cabinet that came in, typical. Probably got damaged in shipping, so I'm carefully taking the glass out. See that heat gun on the right? I use that to get all the putty out. And here I'm attempting to cut a piece of antique glass that I acquired somewhere along the line. But antique glass can be tough, and I don't know what I'm doing. Ouch. So here I went over and I got a piece of Bendheim restoration glass. And that is great stuff. It's new glass. I believe it's hand blown. And they have two different types. They're all good. Sometimes when you're in a real jam like I was on this job with very faceted pieces, you might go to your local friendly frame shop. This is Leah Scotton. She owns Little Falls Frame Shop here in Gorham. She's got a fancy machine, but you still have to know what you're doing. Speaking of local frame shops, my daughter Emily has been making frames in Oregon, but she's moving back to Maine soon. I'm sure she'll be making frames, but she's going to be creating other pieces too, and you can be sure I'll let everyone know about it. Oh, I like this one. Hello. I recently discovered your YouTube channel this weekend and I'm loving your videos. I already learned how to glue down some veneer on a piece I got just a few days ago. But to the point of this email is that I'm trying to clean an Eastlake bed frame, but plain water seems to be removing the finish with the dirt. I'm afraid I have to strip the whole thing and refinish it. Is stripping the right course? Are the color variations due to age and or the wood used? Any insights would be appreciated. Thank you. Boy, I like this. I love the Eastlake style. I like beds. Beds like this are nice. And this, is pretty standard issue one, but all solid walnut. You can see in these last couple pictures that the finish is deteriorated, and they stated it's coming off with water. Well, what I do in this case, I have a video here. This is another walnut Victorian piece I did. I started off washing it. Here I'm using Murphy's oil soap, but any kind of decent soap will work. I'm actually using a gray Scotch-Brite pad, and I'm getting a lot of stuff off of it. And yeah, maybe the old finish is coming off, but only if it's flaking off, and you want that off anyway. So I'm just going to clean it down. Now I'm sanding it just real lightly with 220 paper. Hardly anything. I'm just trying to ensure that the surface is clean, and then I'm going to brush on my favorite finish, the Waterlox tung oil varnish. Every coat looks better and better. If you really want to keep it to a minimum, 2 coats will do it. I usually go for 3 or 4 coats, but that's me. You also asked about the color variations, and I wouldn't give them another thought. Yeah, the different pieces of walnut are different. Some look different in the horizontal than they do in the vertical, and once it's done, you stand back and look at it, you'll never notice it. In fact, you do notice it from the point of view that it looks like a genuine antique. Okay, the next one is easy. Good morning. Could you please tell me what the device is you use to heat your palette knives to work with Mohawk low heat sticks? Is it available somewhere? Thanks for the videos. Well, you're welcome. And here it is, the little oven. And it's funny, he's familiar with the Mohawk low heat sticks, which is what I use. I sometimes refer to them as wax sticks. And these are the palette knives, all different types. But the oven comes from Mohawk also. And here I show how to use it in this next video. Here in this video clip, you see me using the oven. I've got these same palette knives in it. I'm wiping them off with a Scotch-Brite pad. And then you melt bits of the wax into it. And you can wipe it off with a rag too. Hi Tom. We have a mid-century Danish veneer sideboard that we think is teak, but sadly this one got some water damage 3 years ago. The stain appears to have dried out a bit. We value this furniture and would most appreciate any advice to help us restore this lovely piece. That is a beautiful piece of furniture. You know, I see there's a terrarium on top, and inside the terrarium there's a nice microclimate designed for the plants. Unfortunately, there's a microclimate underneath the terrarium too, and that's what attracts the condensation which has caused the damage. So when this piece is restored and the terrarium is put back into place, get something between that metal tray and the teak top, some felt discs or small pieces of wood, anything so that air can get under there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's repair the damage. Typically when you find something like this, there's always something wrong with it, and this one's no different. The top has all kinds of discoloration, a ring, a cube, it's got some discoloration in the back. Okay, I don't think I need to use a stripper on this top. I'm hoping that just acetone and some zero steel wool will do the job. Alright, I let it dry overnight. It may not have been necessary, but I typically do that anyway. Now I'm going to take 100 grit paper and let's see how it sands up. This is great because the color difference that I was so concerned about seems to be going away pretty quickly. You know, this is sanding up really well, but I can still see a faint outline between the light and the dark there. I'm going to put a little thinner on it. Wow, it looks good, but I still think I can see a line there and a difference. I'm going to go ahead and treat this with the oxalic. I'm just going to use our hot tap water. Our water's pretty hot. And then just a couple scoops of oxalic. It doesn't have to be a real strong solution. Oxalic acid can get rid of a lot of different stains that are caused sort of naturally by, in other words, like from water with minerals in it, or from exposure to oxygen or other elements. Okay, now I'm just going to let this dry, and then I'll rinse it off. Alright, I've let this dry overnight, and so you can see it's got all this white powder all over it, which is the oxalic dried. You really can't tell what it's done or not done as far as the discoloration goes. So I'm going to rinse this stuff off really well. Boy, the top looks really good. I can still see some of that outline, but I'm going to let it dry and then give it a good sanding again. Okay, the top is thoroughly dry. As I rub my hand across it, you feel a little fuzziness, and that's from the water raising the grain. So, although I'm going to sand this again with 100, first I'm going to take some 150, and I'm going to sand at a 45-degree angle just lightly to smooth it out. And that's because the water has raised the grain of the wood. Imagine that. If I go with the grain now, I'm going to push those fibers back in. But by sanding at an angle, I'm going to roll those fibers off and cut them off completely. Alright, that's good for the 150. Now, I didn't want to have to sand this with 100 again, but I can still see a very faint outline in just a couple of places. Overall, it's pretty good. So I'm going to sand it again with 100. Now this is a veneered surface. I'm sanding it pretty aggressively with 100, but I'm going to, I'm kind of staying away from the edges till the very end. I want to make sure I don't go through. I'm kind of assuming that this has not been refinished or sanded before, and that I can do this. Okay, after the 100, I sanded it with 150, and I think it looks great now. I'm not even barely seeing that shadow line. So now for the first coat. So in the past, you may have seen when I'm working on an antique, I'll brush this tung oil on and just leave it on, using it as if it's a varnish. I call it a varnish. This is different. This time I'm going to brush it on. I'm going to keep it wet for about 15 minutes. In other words, if I see any dry places, I'm going to add, and then I'm going to wipe it off. Man, I see no sign of that shadow line that we were trying to get rid of. I think the Eastlake and everything really worked. Now, I'm already starting to see dry places, so I'll just go back and add a little to keep it wet. Okay, this oil's been on here for about 10 minutes now. I don't see any more dry spots forming, so I think I can wipe it off. Okay, gotta let this dry overnight. Now, one final word about these rags that you use when doing the oil finish. Just get them out of the house, get them out of the shop. I'm going to take this out, drape it over a sawhorse outside. Tomorrow it'll be dry enough, I'll throw it out. All right, I let this dry overnight, actually 2 nights. And now I'm going to apply the second and final coat of tung oil. I'm going to use satin. I'm going to brush the coat on, and then while it's still wet, I'm going to go over it with 4-0 steel wool. The idea of the steel wool is just to make it really smooth. Sometimes I use black, wet or dry, 600 paper. This time I just chose to use steel wool. Then I'm going to pat it off with the rag. The idea behind the padding is just now that I don't want to leave a film, so to speak, on this top. Patted it off real gently. It looks nice and even. Now we'll just see what it looks like tomorrow. And just a reminder, this rag and this steel wool are going outside. Do not put the steel wool in the trash can, it'll burn like crazy. Okay, this is dried overnight, and I think it looks good. It's got a little bit of a sheen to it, much more than when the first coat dried, and that matches the base. It doesn't have a lot of sheen either. What I'm going to do though, it's got a few little nits on it. I'm going to go over it with steel wool and the beeswax polish. But first I'm going to assemble it. So I'm going to go over the whole case with the beeswax polish, and then I'll do the top. Well, there you go, a nice little teak computer desk or TV stand, $15 and a couple hours of labor. Very useful piece, and it looks pretty good.